You know, when you think about the history of hospitals, there's one name that just pops into everyone's head, right? Florence Nightingale, the lady with the lamp. Her story is absolutely iconic, a real cornerstone of medical history. But was she the only person changing the game, or is there maybe a little more to the story? Let's dive in.
So that's the big question we're tackling today. Was Florence Nightingale's work truly the single most important thing that happened to hospitals in the 1800s? Or is the real story, well, a bit more complicated?
Okay, so to get to the bottom of this, we're going to dig into the legend itself. First, we'll look at the really powerful case for why she's seen as this singular, dominant figure. And then we're going to look at some other pretty revolutionary changes that were happening in medicine at the very same time.
All right, let's start with the legend of the lamp. And look, the case for Nightingale's huge influence on hospital reform is incredibly strong. It's built on a foundation of real, tangible, and systematic change.
And this timeline? Wow, it really lays it all out. You can just see how she built this whole new way of thinking, step by step. It kicks off in 1854, during the Crimean War, where she starts putting her hygiene reforms into practice. Then, boom, 1859, she publishes Notes on Nursing, which basically becomes the Bible for modern nursing. And to top it all off, in 1860, she founds the very first professional nursing school. I mean, you can see it, right? It's a clear, methodical revolution.
So what were these changes exactly? Well, they were super practical. We're talking about strict rules on hygiene, just basic cleanliness, getting fresh air into stuffy rooms with better ventilation, actually organizing the wards so they made sense. But maybe the most radical idea of all, turning nursing into a skilled, respected profession. And these ideas didn't just stay put, they spread like wildfire, completely transforming hospital standards all across Britain.
And this quote, man, it just gets to the absolute heart of it. Her biggest impact wasn't just about clean floors, it was psychological. She totally changed the public's idea of what a hospital even was. Before Nightingale, hospitals were places you went, frankly, to die. People were terrified of them. After her, they became these modern institutions, places you went for treatment, for cleanliness, for actual disciplined care. That is a monumental shift in thinking.
But, and this is a big but, while Nightingale was busy reorganizing wards and creating a nursing profession, a whole other revolution was quietly brewing. This one was happening in operating rooms and science labs. And this is where a different story of progress starts to unfold. Now check out this parallel timeline. Back in 1847, before Nightingale even went to the Crimea, James Simpson discovers chloroform. And then in 1867, Joseph Lister comes along and introduces antiseptic surgery. These weren't just small improvements, they were absolute game changers, and they happened completely separate from Nightingale's work. Let's just zoom in on these two for a second. Simpson's work with anesthetics, it made surgery painless. For the first time, surgeons could take their time, attempt way more complex and life-saving operations. Then you've got Lister, who solved the biggest problem in surgery, infection. By using carbolic acid as an antiseptic, he just dramatically cut down the number of people dying after an operation. These two together turned surgery from something brutal you might not survive into a modern science. And you know what? The story doesn't even stop there. It actually goes beyond the hospital walls, because at the same time, you had public health reformers like Edwin Chadwick who were tackling the root causes of disease out in the cities, improving sanitation, making sure people had clean water, and that reduced the overall amount of sickness, meaning fewer people even needed to go to the hospital to begin with. Okay, so we've got Nightingale's huge organizational revolution on one side, and on the other, we have this incredible scientific and public health revolution. So how do we put all these pieces together? How do we get the full, complex picture of what was going on?
This table, I think, really helps break it down. On one side, Nightingale professionalized nursing, made hospitals clean, and totally changed how people felt about them. On the other side, you have the science and public health folks. They revolutionized surgery, made it survivable, and cut down disease for the whole population. You see how they're different, but both are absolutely vital, right? One made hospitals better places to be, the other provided the tools to actually cure people. So what's the verdict? Well, Florence Nightingale's work was, without a doubt, a massive turning point for hospital care. But, and it's an important but, you can make a very strong argument that the scientific breakthroughs and the big public health reforms actually did more to save more lives in the long run.
And that really brings us to the main takeaway here. Her work was incredibly important, no question. She laid a foundation that we still rely on today. But she wasn't acting in a vacuum. She was one key player, a very important one, but still a part of a much, much larger story of progress in the 19th century.
Which kind of leaves us with this one big question to chew on, right?
When we look back at history, what really drives progress forward? Is it the force of will of a few great individuals like Nightingale? Or is it the unstoppable momentum of great ideas, like antisepsis, that seem to bubble up from many places at once? Something to think about.